Welcome to the Ideal Investor Show. This is the podcast where we help you challenge your mindset and discover where you are. Tired of stories about other people's success? We can help you change your life, determine your time freedom point, and join us on the journey to financial success. Let's go. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Ideal Investor Show, where we bring you great guests for topics related to investing, especially real estate investing, and a little bit of my input on those days when we don't have interview guests. But today we have one of those days with a great guest. We have Andrew here. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Axel.
So Andrew is, I think the founder is probably the right way to put it, for Keel team. And maybe you tell us a little bit, how did you end up being in Keel team, leading Keel team, and what it's all about, and how did you get there?
It's kind of evolved. In the beginning, Keel team started out as a home flipping and wholesale business back in, it was 2014 when I got started. I was flipping houses and mailing out yellow letters to motivated seller groups and putting out bandit signs. And I was flipping houses around Central Florida, where I'm from. And through that, I did that for a couple years, but through that, I got a lead on 2 manufactured homes about an hour and a half away. And it was a probate situation. And a gentleman just wanted to get rid of these things because the lot rent at the park was like $600 a month in Ocala, Florida. And these were nice homes, but he said, hey, come get them, $1,100 a piece. And you can, I have the titles, you can have these homes. They were vinyl sided shingle roof homes. And I knew that they had to cost more to build than $1,100, right? But that was my first exposure to manufactured housing and mobile homes. So I went up and met this gentleman, got the titles, gave him the cash, and filled out a bill of sale. And I came home and got on YouTube and typed in how to make money with mobile homes. And this guy named Lonnie Scruggs popped up on YouTube. He taught a course called Deals on Wheels. He has a book, and he taught how you can buy mobile homes in parks, fix them up, and then sell them on contract to an end buyer that would actually be buying the home from you over monthly payments, and create mailbox money, right? Where you have money coming in every month. There's not a lot of repairs and maintenance because you sold the home. You're not renting it to them. So that's what I did with these 2 homes. And it was amazing. It was very successful. I was able to just do very minimal rehab, clean them up a little bit, and sell those 2 mobile homes. And I was just astonished by the demand, right? I put these things on Craigslist, which at the time was like the area to go sell a mobile home or buy one. And I had like 50 people reach out the first day. And so I was like, okay, this is my niche. And so I was flipping houses, and I turned all my attention to doing these Lonnie deals, and actually did almost 20 of them. I had 20 individual trailers that I was collecting money on every month. That got me out of the rat race. If you're a Robert Kiyosaki fan, that passive income coming in off of these mobile homes that I sold helped me leave my W-2 job because it was covering all my expenses and then some every month. So I started there. I started doing this, and I met a park owner. This is the crazy thing. I met a park owner who started giving me homes in his community. And I was like, this is baffling to me. How does this make sense? I was like, they couldn't understand it. And we went out to lunch, we became friends, and he was giving me homes that needed a little bit of work. I would rehab them and then sell them. But his model was he just wanted lot rent. He just wanted rent for the dirt underneath of the homes. He didn't want to buy and sell the individual mobile homes in the park. That was, my introduction to mobile home parks. He was the one that, basically told me, he's like, hey, you should really get into owning and investing in the parks, which is real estate. You can get financing on it. It's more scalable. There's tax benefits versus, flipping the individual trailers. That was how I got into mobile home parks. I just basically went all in because I had enough monthly income to offset my expenses. And I just learned about syndicating mobile home parks and how to pool together investors. And that was back in 2015. I ended up buying my first park in 2017. And now we've done, over 40 syndications where we've pooled together investors, and we own 43 parks today.
That's very cool. And I want to just pause for a moment because I'm preaching some of that quite frequently. And I think to go, and you mentioned Robert Kiyosaki and the books and stuff like that, to go into this entrepreneur, business owner side of the quadrant. So a couple of things on what you said in how this actually evolved. And maybe we start out with potentially a myth. When I first started, or shortly after I started to actually help other people, I also became a member of Bigger Pockets. And Brandon, the guy that used to be the host of the Bigger Pockets podcast, got into mobile home parks. But one of the arguments every time he had like a deal coming up was, well, you have to realize that due to the legal situation, they're not going to make any more of them. So I wanted to ask you, just because I have you, is that true? Has that changed? Because admittedly, that's probably like 10 years ago when he said something like that.
It's still the case. I'm a big fan of Brandon Turner, Bigger Pockets. He was coming up along the same time that I was getting into the space, and it was really
Right.
fun following him and Ryan Murdoch. But yes, that is one of the very appealing aspects of mobile home park investing is that it's really hard to get new ones developed. It's actually been said that there's more mobile home parks torn down every year than there are new ones being built. So it's the only commercial real estate asset class that I know of that's actually shrinking in terms of supply. But the demand for affordable housing, as you and I know, is absolutely off the charts. The reasons for this are, number one, and I wrote a blog article on this recently, but number one, NIMBY, right? Not in my backyard. There's a single family home subdivision right here, and they want to, zone the land next to it a mobile home park. Well, all of those single family home subdivision homeowners are going to say, hey, that's going to decrease the value of my home. And they're going to show up at the zoning board and say, there's no way that we're going to vote to allow this to be MH. So that's the first problem. The second problem is the cost, right? There is an expense, an economic reason that municipalities, don't really like mobile home parks. Not only are they typically an eyesore, some of these older ones that have a lot of deferred maintenance and things like that because of the old mom and pop owners that just haven't kept up with it, but it's a net loss every month for the municipalities because it costs around on average around 12,000 US dollars to put a child through public school education. And mobile home residents in a mobile home park, those mobile homes are personal property, just like your car is at the DMV. So your
Right.
annual taxes on that mobile home may be $500 or less. But if you have 3 kids living in that mobile home, and that's $12,000 per year, it's a net loss for the local municipality. But that's an argument of why people don't really, want mobile home developments to be coming online. So pretty deep.
With that being said, and demand being high, and I totally agree with you with a lack of affordable housing, do you have some tool or do you know some smart guy who can do an AI tool that makes you aware every time somebody is getting ready to close one so you can jump in there?
To close a mobile home park.
Or wanting to get out of it or something like that?
Gotcha. Yeah, that is really interesting. The one thing that I use is Google Alerts, where you can set up an alert that's like, for keywords like mobile home park or all of the mobile home parks that I own. I put a Google alert so that any news articles that come up that mention my communities, I'll get an email that says, oh, Deer Run Mobile Home Park in Salem, Ohio. There was XYZ taking place surrounding that community, just so I'm in the know on that kind of stuff. And obviously, these are very public events when a mobile home park is looking to sell to a developer who's going to raise the community and then build multifamily apartments or a subdivision there. So the newspapers pick up on it pretty quickly whenever that zoning request is put in.
So that makes sense. One other thing in this context, just for anybody who wants to kind of gain more awareness, myself included, when there is a property that is zoned for a mobile home park, is there a time limit on it, or is the owner for however long they want to be?
Yeah, this is another big issue across the country is the people that sit on the city council, those types of political people. A lot of them just have this stigma, as a lot of people do, right? Of, oh, that's a dirty trailer park, right? It's the eyesore of the community. We got to get rid of that. But, these are grandfathered in typically, but these local city commissioners that will pass different laws that are like, oh, well, you can't bring in a home that's older than 10 years old,
Okay.
and they'll make it more these new regulations that'll make it harder to operate as a mobile home park. Oh, if this vacant lot sits vacant for 6 months, then you can never put a mobile home on that lot ever again. So, you can hire attorneys to go and fight these situations. And a lot of times the cities will concede because it's a grandfathered in zoning. But that's something that you need to research before you buy a property in the due diligence phase. And that's why we spend a ton of time doing that and talking with these officials to get a gauge on, hey, are they going to make it easy for us to work here and fill these vacant lots and sub-meter water sewer? or is this going to be an uphill battle? And then we just, pick a trade-off of where it's a better use of our time.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense, and thanks for clarifying that. So let's transition a little bit into your activity. Let's just say you were to get an alert, or let's maybe to make this a little bit more tangible for the audience. Let's say Andrew gets two alerts, right? And you look in. I'm kind of, let's say the first alert says, okay, this is a park that has been struggling and the owner is old and wants to get out of it. Is there a big difference if the park is like only partially owned and has a lot of older houses on it, or fully, like I know in California where we live, pretty much I lived in San Francisco in the Santa Barbara area, in the San Diego area, and so forth, and pretty much every park that's there, they are absolutely full. If a lot gets available and there was an older house on it, they take it away, put a newer one in. But I have to say, because I used to travel before COVID all across the country, and I have seen parks where you really had the feeling, okay, there are barely any houses left on it. Those would be kind of my question in those scenarios. If you find out about somebody who just wants to get out of the business, but has a fully functioning, more or less fully occupied park versus one that has been declining for a while.
It definitely makes a difference, right? And there's very rural markets in Kansas and other Midwestern states that don't have a lot of employment options, right? So they have big vacancy. And that's why due diligence is so important to look at the demographics, right? And the leading employers, right? Because yeah, in Santa Barbara, yeah, all of those parks are full, right? And if one goes vacant, the park owner doesn't have to do anything. He has 10 people on the waiting list that are willing to buy a brand new home and put it in there and start paying lot rent that's $1,000 a month or more. But in Emporia, Kansas, that may not be the case. It may be, hey, there's 70 trailers here and there's 30 vacant lots, and it's a mom and pop owner that would have to spend the money to bring a home in and to fill that lot. And they've just chosen not to do that because it's eating away at their cash flow that they're using for their retirement. I think it's just very market specific, and we spend a lot of time researching the demographics and the rental rates and the median home price in an area to make sure that it is a target market that we want to invest in.
Okay, yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think that then transitions kind of nicely to the point to say, okay, you are, as Keel team, the organization, from my understanding, becoming basically the park operator when you buy or invest into a park. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, we're the property management company, and the tenants, our model is all the tenants will own their homes. And what we
Right.
found is that when we do that, the residents have a pride of ownership, right? They own these homes. They're going to take care of them. They're going to, put flowers out front and the
Oh, yeah,
spoons
yeah,
and holiday decorations and so forth. And the other big factor here that's important, Axel, is affordability, right? When they own their home, the lot rent maybe is $350 a month. Apartment rents all over the nation on average are over $1,200 a month, for a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment. So
Well,
it's a
actually, just to burst your bubble a little bit, the average rent in the United States right now, which obviously includes like the New Yorks and the San Franciscos of the world, is almost 2,000 a month.
almost 2,000. Exactly. It's insane, right? And more apartments going up every day. 350 a month. Whenever they get that to that point, the turnover is very small. Nationwide, I get a publication that's for manufactured housing communities. Nationwide, the turnover on a tenant-owned home is less than 5% per year. So look at a multifamily apartment complex, they have to turn, around 40 to 50% of their tenant base every year. So
Yeah, and it's because they all come to me and want to get into single family homes.
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
in a sense, what we're doing and what you're doing is, and I'm saying this somewhat jokingly, but I think conceptually it's true. You just have higher density, right? Like we are ideal wealth growers, our community, myself included, we are buying single family homes that just have bigger lots. But
Sure.
fundamentally, the people that come to us to want to live in those homes are people who vast majority come from some sort of an apartment complex
Yeah.
where they feel that what they're really getting in comparison to having your own home with a garage and a little garden around it and stuff like that, especially most of what we're offering initially is all freshly renovated, like you said, like
Yeah.
basically recently flipped, so to speak,
Sure.
and so the difference in rent is actually not that high, especially if they used to live in a slightly more, or let's say newer apartment complex. right? I mean, most of the properties we have, I don't have one, not one single one where the rent is $2,000 for a single family home. And they're all at
Wow.
least 3 bedroom, 2 baths, or 4 bedroom, 2 baths, or something like that, right? And so
Yeah.
now, admittedly, they're mostly in the Midwest or in Idaho or Chicago area, stuff like that. But still, if you were to go in an apartment complex, it's not much cheaper than that. This difference in density now, what you said, let's just say for keeping the numbers easy, like $400 or $500 for the lot rent. If somebody were to say, oh, Andrew is offering me to own the manufactured house on it, can you give a little bit of an idea what the range is between like something that is in a good status, so it's not like just for a few years and then you have to get rid of it, but used, versus maybe even all the way to something new, and how much people would have to assume and how much square footage?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. For a manufactured home, there's kind of a quick and dirty way from the outside to tell the age of a mobile home, and it's the roof, the shape of the roof. So if there's a flat roof, those are typically the older homes that were manufactured in the 50s or 60s. Um,
Right.
if it's a rounded roof, those are typically in the 60s or 70s that were manufactured. And then you'll find some homes that have pitched roofs that are still metal on metal, and those you're getting into the 80s, 90s. And then the vinyl sided shingle roof homes, those started to be manufactured in the 90s, 2000s, up to today is what
Right.
they're trying to make it look like more of a traditional single family home. So, you can gauge that from the outside and see, hey, what does that look like? But it completely depends, Axel. I mean, I've been in some 1970s homes with a flat roof or rounded roof, and I get inside and they're just immaculate, right? They've been really maintained well. So it's just a case by case basis. But HUD came out in I think it was 1976, and they created some rules and regulations of the building quality of manufactured homes, and they would put a HUD seal on the mobile homes. So homes built after 1976, it might be 1978, but homes after that date that are, built 1976 to 1978 or newer, they had to be built to a certain quality to get the HUD approval. And, they're a little bit better quality, better, better built for transport, wind zones and things like that.
Okay, well, but if we go and say, okay, what's the comparison if somebody were to say, I'm looking for somewhere like in around 1,000 square foot, or maybe up 1,200 if you have the lot size, for something new versus something like 15 years old or 20 years old? What is the range of prices?
Yeah, the prices for something that's, maybe 15 years old, it depends on the market, right? But like to get something from the manufacturer is probably going to be, $15 to $25,000 for something 15 years old, and then some of that older home stock, there's markets that we own in where those are trading for around $5,000, right? So to buy the home itself.
How high does it go for relatively new?
For relatively new, pricing did increase, but 55,000 is a good range. I mean, obviously you could get a fully decked out manufactured home and spend over 100,000 for a nice double wide with a porch around the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm asking mainly because the next logical question for especially people in our audience who know that we are typically talking more about the traditional stick-built home, is what are the rules for financing? If I were to say, okay, Andrew is now becoming the owner of this new park, he's lucky because the little bit what was there he could get rid of without getting into zoning stuff. He's modernizing also the utilities and stuff. And so now it's getting ready to allow new tenant owners basically to come in. And I'm asking myself, okay, I can put 50,000, but can I finance this new home? Or this doesn't have to be new, but
Yeah,
if I
the
wanted to get it,
manufactured home. We call it
yeah,
chattel financing. And there
okay.
are, several nationwide chattel financing companies out there, PEP Lending. There's a Berkshire Hathaway company called 21st Mortgage. That's probably the biggest in the space that will finance, manufactured homes themselves. Um, you know, there's higher rates, right? There's higher interest rates.
Right. But I'm just thinking more like, can you get 80% or 50%, or what's typical?
Yeah, I think you can get 80 to 90% financing on these, but the interest rates will be higher than a single family home, deal by a
Right,
couple
but I mean,
points.
if you think about, you get let's say a $50,000 place, and be ridiculous and say you pay 10% interest, right? So that's $5,000, and then you want to also pay it off, let's say in 10 years. So that's another $5,000. So you pay $1,000 a month for the home, and let's go with your $400. So for $1,400, you basically own your own home. In 10 years, it's literally yours, and it goes down to $400 a month, right? Is that about right?
In theory, yeah. And obviously our model, right, as mobile home park owners is that, hey, we're going to be able to beat inflation with annual rent increases to the lot rent. More importantly, secure the equity that we invest and make sure that, hey, there's no chance of losing our investment and that we're not realizing a real negative return because inflation's, 5% or whatever. But we're able to beat that and, raise rents like the REITs have been able to do 5 to 10% per year over the last 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the point is, and I want to get to the business model from an investor perspective or participant in a syndication. For me, I'm just saying, okay, if you get in a relatively, and I think 50,000 is probably a pretty nice
Yes.
manufactured home, right? So you get a pretty nice manufactured home, relatively new, and you're paying 1,400 for 10 years. And if you have any extra money available, you can shorten that 10-year time period. And then from then on, for however long Andrew is owning the place, you pay whatever then, maybe if you did the 10%, maybe it's $600 or $700 by then. But that's
Correct.
for everybody. And yes, it might increase, but you don't ever have to pay for it. What I'm getting at is we do our deal, and I'm just seeing this as a stepping stone, what you're doing, Andrew. In our deal, we recommend 30-year mortgage, but that typically also means, even though nobody I know has ever paid the full 30 years, but you probably pay 20. And in your case, even with higher interest rates, you can get in much earlier. You pay the same or less than you pay in an apartment. And within 10 years or less, the place is yours. Not the park, but the house itself, right? And so
Exactly. There's a very important factor here because we're talking about renters and the renter's mindset and this issue of building equity, right? Like with your example you just gave, our residents are able to, own something at the end of that 10-year period. And if you're renting in an apartment complex or elsewhere, at the end of that 10 years renting and paying whatever that is, you have nothing to show for it. And that's a big problem that the majority of Americans are not able to buy a house. They can't afford the down payment. They can't, get out of that renter mindset. So this is a pathway where they can build some equity. And I think that's important to note. There's a social stewardship side of this.
yeah, absolutely. And I see the social component for what we do. If you are relatively early in your career to say, I want to buy something, right? So for any of those more expensive places, you are actually better off to be the tenant,
Yeah.
not just for what you just mentioned, but also if you look at who is the winner,
Yeah.
right? What I like to get and what I teach our ideal wealth grower community is we want to have a win-win-win situation. We want to have a good tenant like you just described, who dependently pays the rent, but the rent is fair. The rent is like $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 for a single family home. So they get a good property that is kept well with professional property management for a reasonable price. Because of that, we also win because we can get these properties for a reasonable price, and property management, which we basically use as our outsource partner, wins because they have very little to do, especially when they're tenants like you just described. Now let's transition real quick to, you said you basically find these parks with Google alerts and otherwise.
Yeah. Mostly cold calling is where we get most of our deals.
Right. Let's say you find a park and you look at all the due diligence, all the research and stuff that we mentioned earlier, and now you make the decision, okay, we want to acquire this park and turn it into a cash flowing investment. Can you talk a little bit about what the investment amount is, how that works, and what people can expect if they say, hey, Andrew, this is actually cool. I wouldn't want to start that business by myself, but if I want to join Keel team from an investor perspective, how does that look like?
Yeah, totally. So we're buying assets that are around $2 million. And typically around that, you can get, maybe 50 units. So it's a
Okay.
low cost per unit relative to other asset classes. And then ideally, we're buying from mom and pops that we call GOAT owners, gray, old, and tired. They're ready to retire. And there's just, they used to renovate all the homes themselves. I've heard that one too. We kind of did our own rendition of that. But, we're buying a lot of times they would do everything themselves, right? They own that one mobile home park. They would fix everything up themselves. And
Right.
now they're in their, 80s and they don't have that energy anymore, that ability. So we'll buy those communities that are seven, out of the 50 lots, there's 40 occupied. And we can come in, fix up the homes. That's a way to add value. Fill vacant lots if any homes moved out with new homes, and then sell those to the residents. A big one is submetering water and sewer. A lot of these landlords of the parks have included water, sewer, and trash in their rents because they just
Right.
always did. And we'll bill that back to the residents, and the total consumption will reduce by like 30% because now they're actually paying for their water usage, and they don't just let the toilet flapper, run for a month because they're getting charged for that. So those are ways that we're able to reduce our expenses, increase the income by, filling up the occupancy and doing some modest rent increases. Lot rents are historically low in mobile home parks because the majority of these assets, like 70% of them, are owned by mom and pops that only own that one mobile home park.
Right.
So, they haven't increased rents as they should because at this point, a lot of them have them paid off and they're scared of the turnover because it's expensive to, bring a home in and get it filled again. So that's kind of the model, but typically we'll pull together a group of investors, maybe 10 or so, and raise $1 million, and each person puts in 100,000, and they'll get fragmented ownership where we, the general partners, will run everything, manage everything, and they have an economic interest in that property.
And so do they get percentage profit then? If let's say you take that example, you own 50%, they own the other 50%, and they would get then 50% of the profit. Is that about the
So
right
we
way
have
to?
like a value add model. So our model is they'll get the first 10% that the property generates. And during our 5-year hold period, we're investing, more than just the down payment. We're bringing in homes, we're submetering, we're doing a lot of work to the property. So our goal is to refinance. We'll buy it with a local bank, but we want to refinance into agency financing, which is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. That's the best debt you can get on these assets. They're government, sponsored lenders, and they are promoting affordable housing. And that's why they offer the best terms in the
Right.
space for these. So we'll refinance into those and pull out the initial equity as quickly as possible after we've increased the value and increased the income. And then what we'll do is we'll keep our investors in. So they'll have fragmented ownership
Right.
in the deal. So they'll get the 10%, while their money's out. Then they get their money back plus the 10%. And then they still own, a slice of the equity, and they'll get, distributions on that into perpetuity.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. That's probably pretty cool. Now, is 100,000 a minimum, or can people get in with less?
Typically, we'll do 100,000 as our minimum. Sometimes with like newer investors, if they want to put in 50, we've allowed that as well. Typically, 100,000 is kind of what we're looking for. That way, we don't have too many investors in a deal, and it's only around 10 or so.
Makes sense. And that kind of makes me wonder, or pretty sure that you only really work with accredited investors, right?
Typically, only accredited investors. Some deals are like friends and family deals that we'll put together, but mostly it's 506C syndications.
Cool. Now, just from a general perspective, I'm asking this more for people who say, okay, well, maybe I'm not an accredited person, or maybe I don't have 100,000 to invest as cash investment. If somebody were to want to buy, let's say, one of those $30,000-$40,000 manufactured houses and put them on a mobile home park, can you use those as investment properties?
Yeah, there are investors that will own homes in our communities, and we don't allow a ton of that because the lenders don't want that. The agency lenders don't want somebody to own, 10 of the homes in your community and be subleasing those. And plus we've had other issues where the resident will move out and rack up a big utility bill in the middle of winter, and then, the person that owns the home, will have to get stuck with that gas bill or whatever it is and pay that. So we've just had some issues there. So we don't really like the whole subleasing model. We want people that are going to live in these homes to be on our leases and be the homeowner. So that's what we promote, and we try to broker the sale of homes to people that fit that model instead of the investor model.
Okay. Yeah, no, I understand. I was just thinking, I'm not aware of that many people, but I may just know the wrong people that run around with 100,000 sitting, burning a hole in their pocket that they need to desperately give to Andrew, right? So that's why I'm always thinking, if somebody likes the idea, likes the model, but is kind of excluded either because they're not accredited or because they don't have that much money for an initial investment, what other options do they have in the same fundamental model?
Yeah, there's crowdfunding sites that have similar type of setups with lower minimums and things like that. I'm more of a boutique firm. I'm not always raising money. We just raise money per deal, and we maybe do 5 deals per year. So, there may be other platforms and bigger funds that would be a better fit, for the smaller investor.
Right, that makes sense. And I mean, in reality, if you ever run into somebody, I have to do this now, a perfect setup. If you run into somebody who says, "Hey, I would want to do this," I heard you, Andrew, on the podcast, and you tell them, "Okay, well, how much can you invest?" One thing I can say is, if they don't have enough to do the 100,000 or 80,000, whatever it might be, into the mobile home park, they can, with 30 or 40,000, actually do the investments that we do for single family homes. That now obviously wouldn't own 5% or 8% or something of a 50-unit park, but for a lower amount. And this is sometimes what I'm pointing out, right? Like right now, with the right kind of financing that we can offer through our partnerships, you can get started in the $15,000 to $30,000 area, and then own one property. Now, obviously, the return on investment is not going to be as high as what you offer, Andrew, but it's at least one way to get into really owning
real estate, right? And then you get the tax
residential.
benefits and other things, right? Because that's a
Well,
big
and
part of
without having the turnover, right? I mean, I think the beauty of your model is that they're in the park and there are basically tenant owners. They're going to stay there for probably as long as they can. And the same is true for our properties versus doing multifamily apartment, and you basically might have high occupancy, but you also have high maintenance and high kind of like refresh rates and all that kind of stuff.
And before we started recording, I said, hey, what's going to add the most value to your listeners? And you said, hey, we're talking about investing, real estate investing, and cash flow, right? Passive income. And what's more important when we're looking at a cash flow investment is consistency, right? We want that consistency every month so we can depend on that so we can spend that money, right? Because it's what fun is having a property that is worth so much money, has a lot of equity, right? You can't spend equity, it's stuck in there. So I think what your model is doing, and what my model is doing, is we're cash flow investors. We are doing this so that you can increase your monthly income in a passive manner, in a tax efficient manner, so that you can consistently spend what is coming in and grow your net worth without having to expend your time to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. So keelteam.com, I know, is the website. Is there anything that people should do to get in touch with you, or is it just from the website directly?
Yeah, the website is the best way. It's keelteam.com, KEELTEAM.com. There's a free ebook on there that talks about the top 10 things you should know before investing into mobile home parks. So feel free to check that out. And yeah, thank you so much for having me, Axel.
Yeah, well, there's one more question that we always have that is not related to investing, at least one, sometimes two. The first one would be, if you could meet anybody, alive or not, who would it be and why?
I would say Ben Franklin. Just I've read, his biography, and I was a big Charlie Munger fan, so that would be a number 2 for me. And I know Ben Franklin was a big fan of his, so those would be like my number 1 and number 2.
Cool. And then the second question, since we have the time, is if you had a time machine, you could go anywhere, where would you go and why?
I love that question. I would go back to when the founding fathers, right, were trying to create America back after the Civil War and put everything together. I just think that would be such an amazing time to be alive and just see all of these big names, that we're familiar with today. Ben Franklin, Thomas Edison, there's just Alexander Hamilton, some of those big names that are wow, that would be so cool to be alive when those guys were building the foundation that we know today.
Do you actually think that we call them the founding fathers, right? But when they created the Constitution and those kind of documents, do you think that they were at least hoping that they would last for 250 years?
I think they were trying to build something that would definitely withstand the test of time, right? And have checks and balances. And I think they mostly did that, right? But at the same time, I think in today's political realm, I think I would speak for a lot of people by saying, hey, I wish that there was more than just this bipartisan system where it's hey, there's a Republican and a Democrat, those two hierarchies pigeonholed into voting for one or the other. I don't know. It kind of just feels like you're, especially this year with the election year, it kind of feels like you're stuck with this not great options, but that's a whole nother conversation.
I don't like to be particularly political, but that's another story, another discussion. That tells me, Andrew, it was awesome to have you, and I think you and I are in a place where we should talk more often.
We should. No, I agree, Axel. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, guys, when you listen to us, and girls, it's keelteam.com. Go there, find Andrew, make a connection, and see what you can do with mobile home parking.
Thanks again, Axel.
Absolutely.